we closed in March, and yeah, around July, August, started to slowly let people back onto campus. So no, it's been but I think the shift to delivering online, you know, I think I only joined Gloucestershire on the 1st of September.
Okay.
So I've only been in post for just over a month. And the university I left, we moved about 25,000 learners online in about 3 days. It was, you know, I think you probably had the same experience. But we were quite far behind, I think, many systems around the world in terms of our adoption of technology. So I think the UK is quite behind in terms of how well we use tech.
Oh, is it?
It was quite a task.
Over the world, all are the same, that we previously get used to with the conventional one, offline teaching, while even in Japan, where with the very people say that they have a good skills and knowledge on the technology, because Japan is known with the Sony brand, for example. But my friends say that professors there are still facing the same difficulties from moving from the offline to the online.
Yeah, I mean, it was you know, it's just and I think for students as well and for colleagues, I think that it showed how big gaps there were in their own skills and ability to use the technology that's available. And certainly where I came from, the university I've been at, they wouldn't permit us to use Zoom. So we were sort of looking for tools that were approved by the university. So we've been using, you know, Collaborate on Blackboard and Teams, and so no, it's been a very interesting few months, hasn't it? It's been no, so you know, and maybe I don't know how long you want from me.
For your presentation, it's 20
Yeah,
minutes. 20
so how
minutes.
long? Say that again. Sorry, I missed that.
20 minutes.
Perfect. That's fine. That's great.
And
Great.
if you want to try the share screen, please try it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can please try it. Good afternoon, Pak Wing. How are you? Okay, that's good. I think anyone can see your share screen.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it is. Everyone
Okay.
can see? Yeah, I think they can. If I can, then they can.
Okay,
So
great.
we have 3 speakers today. You, then Professor Joniarto Parung from Universitas Surabaya, and then Dr. Wiryono Raharjo, Pak Wing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm fairly new to the project, so you know, as in I really look forward to sort of hearing from everyone, because I think there's an opportunity, isn't there, to learn from global experiences about how people have responded, and you know, and to see what else we could be doing in a UK context, because you know, we can be a bit insular in our practice in the UK.
Okay.
So it'd be a good opportunity to look at, you know, how others have responded, and particularly some of the more strategic decisions that have gone on, rather than the, you know, we've all had to deal with that operational side, haven't we? That immediate challenge of dealing with the crisis. But actually, you know, I think the more interesting work is how we innovate our way beyond the next few months. So it'd be really good. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Dominic. So
Great.
should I call you Paige or Dominic?
It's Dom.
Oh, Dom. Okay, I will call you Dom.
Dom, yeah.
Good afternoon, Prof. Johnny.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi, Dom. Hi.
Hi. Good to meet
Pak
you.
Wing, please unmute, Pak.
Oh, sorry.
Hello.
Hi.
Pak John. Hi, John.
Hi.
I'm Wing.
Yes.
Hi, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Let me
Nice
just
to meet
change
you
my name.
So you can easily call him Wing.
Wing.
Yes, Wing.
Yeah, it is. That's my calling name. So
Okay.
His
Okay.
nickname.
just like flying.
Yeah.
Oh, there we
So
go.
he can
And
fly.
I'm yeah.
He can fly.
Tom,
Brilliant.
I'm John. Johnny, easy.
Hi there.
But Johnny. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice
Well,
to meet you.
for today, we actually expect to start at 3, but if I see now, it is only still 10 to join this webinar, so we should wait, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there are around 70 registered for this webinar.
Okay. Brilliant.
Yeah, so we should wait.
Good news.
Okay.
And each speaker will present for 20 minutes, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Pak Joni, Pak Wing, 20 minutes ya, Pak?
10 minutes. It's not
20 minutes, right?
20.
Yeah, 20 minutes. 20.
Okay.
Maybe less than that.
Okay,
Okay.
please. No problem. No problem.
Okay, we're just waiting.
We still have another 5 minutes if you want to take a coffee or tea. Please. Or Pak Wing or Pak Joni would like to try the share screen because Dom already tried it and it was successful.
Okay, let me try then.
Yeah, Pak.
I haven't seen Nadine.
Yeah, Nadine is not here yet.
Right.
Only Mike and Saleh are already here.
How about my screen? It's okay?
Okay, yes.
Mhm.
Okay,
You
it's
can
good.
see it. Pak Wing, you wanna try your share screen?
I think okay. Let me just. You see my screen?
Yes, Zoom.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, so I plotted Dom will start first, then Prof. Johnny, then Pak Wing.
Yeah, but don't you think that we should wait Nadine and?
Yes, of course,
others?
of course. I think we should wait for another 15 minutes perhaps,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
only still 10 are here. Well, it's almost 3 o'clock, so we should wait another 10, 15 minutes. Let's see
Okay,
how many people
no
are
problem.
coming.
No problem.
Okay, let me take some drink first. Then. It's already
Mhm.
settled so far, so we just wait to start then.
Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, Nadine. Good afternoon, Viviana. Good afternoon, Budolina. Well, as the participants are still all not here, so I think we should wait for another 10 minutes. We will start 15 past 3.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. I also have chatted with Dom. Then he also tried the share screen and it was successful. Also with the other two speakers, they also have tried the share screen and their voice, and all of them were successful. So we just need to wait until the participants are quite a lot, then we will start.
Okay, that's brilliant. And thank you so much, Adi, for hosting the meeting this morning and this afternoon. Well, let's just say today because
Yeah,
it
today.
covers everything.
No problem. With
brilliant.
pleasure, Nadine. Hope this webinar will be successful. Let's see.
I'm sure it will be. I mean, it's the first webinar and it's a fantastic opportunity to kickstart the first of many events, hopefully.
Okay.
And I do look forward to the discussions. And good morning, Don. Lovely to see
Hi,
you.
Nadine. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good, good. When did you say that we'd come back? Sorry, I missed that bit. Quarter past?
Quarter past. Hmm?
Great, okay.
Yeah.
I'll see you in about 10 minutes. I'm just going to go and make sure my son is getting on with his homework because he's been sent home from school, Nadine, for 2 weeks. They've closed his bubble. So he's in self-isolation for 14 days.
Oh dear, bless him.
I'll just go and check he's
Okay, please.
stop playing Fortnite and is doing his homework.
Fortnite, the same game then. Okay.
Okay.
Morning, everyone.
Hello, Mike. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay. Thank you very much. I was literally just writing you an email.
Good. Well, that's good.
To send you some stuff as we have discussed yesterday.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. I'm at my mum's at the moment, so I'm sitting around the old dining table. So if you can see some old photographs behind me, I apologize.
Oh, that's
Very
wonderful.
nice. Very nice.
Good morning,
Hello,
Wing. Good afternoon.
Hi, hello, Nadine.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm at the office now. Sometimes, the electricity, we experience blackout. So I decided to do it here. Safer.
Yeah, I understand.
We had that problem, Wing, last week in England when we had such dreadful rain.
Okay.
In fact, it was the morning of the conference that I had to do from the kitchen because we had power failure. So it happens here quite often as well.
Oh, is it? Even UK has blackout?
Here
sometimes.
Okay.
I think in my city, it's just this particular area near our campus. I live near the campus. I don't know why.
It's not caused by an earthquake or volcano, though.
Well, it's very close to the volcano, of course, but there's nothing to do with that, I guess.
Good.
At the moment.
That's good. That's good.
I like your backdrop, Wing.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I made it myself.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's nice.
No, we in Department of Architecture, we have a lot of backdrop. Every meeting, we change the backdrop. We let the student to design the backdrop and use it.
Because it's architecture, that's why. So many design.
But I have a problem. Hi.
Very good morning. Very good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon here. Good morning there. Okay.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I cannot use any background because my computer is not suitable for that. So just
But the new background looks lovely. Very nice.
Yeah, in the meeting, in the dining room.
Hello Pak Adi, hello Bu Fani, how are you?
Halo Pak, mohon maaf terlambat ini tadi ngurus sorry. Sorry, I got a problem
We
with
will
my
start.
You speak in a second language now.
It's okay. No.
Yes, it's still one of the things on my list is to start learning a bit of Bahasa every day. I do have my Duolingo on my phone, so which
I think
reminds me
Ida
on
is
a
the
regular
best
basis.
teacher.
Ida, yes, so I've heard. I know that she is teaching Neil.
Hi Bu Ida.
Hai Pak Adi, hai Nadine, Pak Wing, how are you?
Yeah.
Apa kabar?
That's Medin. You have to speak in
How are
Indonesia.
you?
How are you?
Ida, thank you for your message just a while ago. And yes, I think that's a good idea. So I'll get back to you on that.
Okay, yep. Thank you, Nadine.
Okay.
Did you face any difficulty joining this Zoom, Nadine?
I didn't know. It was very smooth.
Okay, that's good.
Adi, will you be recording this meeting?
Yes, I actually live stream this webinar on YouTube. Do you want me to share the link?
That's brilliant. Thank you.
I will share it now on via WhatsApp. You can easily, because in YouTube it is automatically recorded, right? On YouTube, if you live stream on YouTube, it is automatically recorded by YouTube.
That's brilliant. Excellent.
Here, you can try to open the YouTube link, and you are now in the YouTube now.
I see.
Because this is an open meeting, so I think it's fine to live stream, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Excellent.
In social protection. And you have to
This is a different one.
there can be pragmatic national development plans.
Right, I will come back to you in about 5 minutes.
No problem. We will start in 5 minutes time.
That's brilliant.
+3, yeah.
Great. I see that more participants are joining us, so that's good.
Hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Nadine, you're back. Prof. Johnny, Pak Wing, Dom, are you here?
Yes, I am here now.
Okay.
Yeah.
As it's already 3:15, then we should start now.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome. Good afternoon, Dom. Good afternoon, Prof. Johnny, Pak Wing. Welcome to the first BUiLD webinar. And this time we have a title of a leading university during and in the aftermath of a disaster, insights from Indonesia and the UK, hosted by Universitas Surabaya. Today we are glad that we have 3 speakers from 2 different countries, from UK and Indonesia. Dr. Dominic Pets as the head of the School of Business, University of Gloucestershire, UK. I always difficult to spell it. Sorry for that. Then
No.
Prof. Johnny from Universitas Surabaya, and then Pak Wing, Dr. Wing from Universitas Islam Indonesia. May all be healthy and always under God's protection. My name is Adi. I am the Ubaya Director, Office of Institutional Cooperation, who will be the moderator for this webinar for the next 90 minutes. Today, Ubaya is very honored to be part of the Erasmus Plus BUiLD member consortium. And BUiLD is a university consortium, consists of University of Gloucestershire, UK, Copenhagen's Profession Hogeschool from Denmark, Havelaker, Austria, Instituto Politecnico do Porto, Portugal, Universitas Surabaya itself, President University, Indonesia, Universitas Andalas, Universitas Cairun, Universitas Ahmad Dahlan, Universitas Islam Indonesia, Universitas Muhammadiyah Palu, Universitas Lambung and Universitas Lambung Mangkurat. This BUiLD program is fully funded by the European Union, and it aims to develop disaster resilience capacity in Indonesia. This webinar session will last approximately 90 minutes, in which each speaker, we have 3 different speakers, will present for 20 minutes, and it will be followed by a question and answer session for approximately 30 minutes. In the session, in the Q&A session, participants can type the questions on the chat column. Then the speakers could answer the questions from the participants. And today, as I mentioned, we have 3 speakers. Dr. Dominic, let me share screen his resume, and then I will also inform and read Prof. Johnny and Pak Wing resume. Okay, let me share screen first. Can you see my share screen? Can you?
Yep.
Okay. So Dr. Dom or Dominic Page is currently the head of the University of Gloucestershire Business School. He has been head of the South Wales Business School at the University of South Wales since 2017, having previously worked as the associated head of department for business and management in Bristol Business School at the University of the West England. Prior to this, Dom was a senior lecturer in HRM at UWE, University of West of England, course leader for BA Honors Business and Management and Human Resource Management, and faculty lead for Disability and Widening Access. He also spent time at Cardiff University in the Center for Psychosocial Disability Studies Unit as a research fellow, where he worked with Wales assembly government on the management of work, health, and GP education. These areas of research include equality and diversity, welfare and welfare reform, political economy of work, mental health, and employment and workplace health. While Prof. Johnny Resume, Prof. Johnny finished his doctorate degree in the University of Strathclyde in Scotland. He is now a professor in the supply chain management at the Ubaya Industrial Engineering Department, and he was also director of Ubaya from 2011 till 2018. Is that correct, Pak?
19.
Oh, sorry, 19. Till 2019. He has published some research in reputable journals in Europe, Asia, and all over the world. He contributes to the Better Indonesian Universities through being a national assessor for the National Accreditation Board. He is currently director of Ubaya Integrated Outdoor Campus. It is an Ubaya training center that aims to develop people characters through various outdoor activities. While Pak Wing, or his complete name is Wiryono Raharjo, PhD. He obtained his undergraduate degree in architectural engineering from UGM, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia. Upon completing his study at UGM, Wing joined Universitas Islam Indonesia in 1987 to help establish the Department of Architecture where he taught until now. He did his Master of Architecture degree at Dalhousie University, Canada, and he took his PhD study at the University of Melbourne, Australia from 2006 till 2010. And in addition to his teaching assignment at the Department of Architecture, Wing is currently the Vice Rector for Partnership and Entrepreneurship of Universitas Islam Indonesia. Without further ado, I now give the time and screen to Dom. Dom, your time is 20 minutes. Please.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, please.
So just one moment.
No problem.
It worked very well a moment ago, and now doesn't seem to be working. One moment. There we go. Yeah, I'm having a few technical challenges here. One moment. There we go. Right, hopefully we can see that. Is that okay?
Yes, it is. I can see it clearly.
Right. So firstly, thank you very much for the very warm welcome and the opportunity to present today, but also I think this is a fantastic opportunity for me as a leader of a business school to perhaps see practice on a global scale and what can we learn as a business school around the practices that are emerging in a cross-cultural context. So thank you very much. You've already given me a very warm welcome, so I won't spend much time here. But as I said, I started at the University of Gloucestershire on the 1st of September, really at the point of where this crisis was really at its peak. So I've come into a school and a business school. We're a relatively large business school. We have around 2,000 learners, both on campus and off campus, at a point where we were really having to transform. So what I'd like to do today is just spend a bit of time providing you with perhaps some insight into how the UK government has responded to the current crisis in terms of higher education policy, and also give you some insight into the broad range of university responses, but with a particular focus on how business schools have responded to this pandemic. And really, I think this is the opportunity to learn about how what we can learn comparatively about how different countries have responded to this crisis. So I'll get started. Firstly, a little bit about the UK government, because perhaps unlike Indonesia, the UK government has increasingly had rather an adversarial relationship with higher education. There's been lots of questions increasingly raised in the UK about the value of higher education, despite our significant contribution to the UK economy. There's been questions raised about the value, and this has accelerated really during this pandemic. So the UK government response can be summarised in three key areas. The first has been an initial focus on institutional survival, and that has largely been around major changes to the funding arrangements, the recruitment models, and it's been largely reliant on increased marketisation of higher education for institutions to ensure financial stability during a period of major crisis, rather than necessarily direct intervention by the government to secure the future of higher education. The second area of intervention we've seen over the last year has been short-term changes to research funding models, and direct funding for research that impacts on the pandemic, particularly around the vaccination and treatment agenda, rather than investment in higher education as a solution really to the economic challenges that we face in the UK as a result of the pandemic. And the final area we've seen as a response from the UK government is pressure on the sector, in particular the approval of non-traditional higher educational institutions and the promotion of other routes rather than higher education. And what I would suggest is we're seeing a retreat in the UK from a model of mass higher education. For example, during this pandemic, the government has removed a target of 50% participation in higher education in the UK. So we've seen a really mixed response, first of all, from the UK government, and it has been relatively adversarial. Now, broadly speaking, the impact of this global crisis in HE in the UK has been initially some major financial concerns, as you might imagine, really, because the UK system has become highly marketised. And we have traditionally, and in a growing level, had a real exposure to the overseas market. So some institutions, for example, have up to a third and more of their income coming from overseas direct recruitment. But we also have experienced a really turbulent home market. So the initial response was very much around that financial uncertainty that institutions were experiencing. And the response and the result of that has been a really polarized higher educational market. We've seen the Russell Group universities, the Oxfords, Cambridges of the UK have massive increase in the size of their market and their student recruitment, at the expense often of those institutions that have traditionally focused on vocational education, supporting business and widening access. So access for broader groups of students to come into higher education have really suffered during this pandemic. But that has also placed real pressure on older universities, having to place significant numbers of students under real pressure at the same time as having to fundamentally change their approach to delivery. But interestingly, despite the pandemic, we have seen in the UK continued growth in the international market. So despite the changes that have gone on in the pandemic and facing this crisis, the reality has been that we have seen growing interest from international markets, in particular Southeast Asia and India have been expanding and growing in the depths of a pandemic, perhaps against some of the expectations that we saw. And part of that has been that at the same time as this crisis, the UK has changed the visa requirements and opened up the international market further. So a really mixed picture that we've had to lead and manage through. Now, this has essentially presented us with a range of challenges, both operationally, the short-term challenges, but more significantly, long-term strategic challenges for both universities and, in the case that we'll explore now, in the case of business schools. And I discussed later on that this has been a bit of an existential crisis for business schools. What's our role during periods of crisis and the current pandemic? So, broadly speaking, the institutional response, UK universities have responded on 4 main levels, 4 tiers of response. The first of that has been a direct response to the pandemic and the creation of innovative responses, including medical technology, vaccination work, testing and tracing technology, medical interventions. So we've seen universities being at the forefront of the direct response to the pandemic. The second area that UK institutions have responded during this pandemic has been indirect responses. For example, supporting regional economic development, recovery for regional industries, and for individuals directly affected economically by the pandemic. The third area we've seen major innovation by UK institutions is indirect research, particularly research that is focused on social impact of the pandemic, economic impact, and the individual impact that living through a period of major crisis has had both on our institutions, our organizations, and on our people as a nation. So a real focus on indirectly what has the impact of the pandemic been. And the final area, and the most perhaps challenging area in terms of leading through this period of crisis, has been around major changes and transformation in terms of teaching and learning, including a shift, as we've all experienced, to an online and blended environment at real pace. So, you know, shifting 25,000 students to an online model in around 3 days has presented real challenges, as we probably experienced globally. So what about business schools? The first response to the pandemic has largely been around both major operational changes and leadership challenges. But the first trend we have seen is major innovation in delivery models. And we've seen the rise of some large institutions like the Oxfords and the Manchesters moving towards really innovative models of delivery as a response to both economic crisis and the pandemic, placing limitations on our ability to deliver in a traditional classroom setting. We've seen the launch of app-based subscription models by major Red Brick and Russell Group institutions, really seeing a major disruption in the models of education that exist in the UK in a way that hasn't expanded and progressed in the same speed that we've seen globally in the UK. So real period of major technological disruption. Now, in the short term, there was an operational challenge about coping with the adjustment to this online environment, the broader sort of applications and implications of that technological change, the short-term actions really of moving delivery online, closing down the physical spaces at real pace, early indications first of a relatively easy panic phase. And we engaged in a range of principles of good practice, of knowledge management, of educational technology, all created real opportunities to deal in the short term with that transition from a physical to an online environment. But we need to recognize that's a temporary fix, and there are longer term strategic priorities. Now, one of the other major challenges we're facing as an institution and as a sector is now managing in this remote environment, an academic community that is now dispersed geographically. And one of the major responses we've seen in the UK and in our own institution is increased work-related stress, burnout, and pressure on our academic community. And the final area we've seen in terms of a major leadership challenge is that there's a major mismatch now in the skills between traditional academic skill set and this contemporary delivery model. So this just gives you a feel for some of the major challenges that we have faced over the last few months as an institution. So how have UK business schools responded? Now, the first area is we've seen major adjustments to our curricula. Across the UK, there's a call for business schools to respond to recognising new models of business and to engage in strategic activity that supports the recovery of our economy post and during this period of major crisis. Now, initially, I think there was an existential crisis in business schools, which was, well, what's our contribution to this period of major global crisis? What role do we have as business schools in supporting both global and local growth and recovery and resilience of organizations? And whilst academics disagree to some extent on the current crisis and whether or not it marks a radical turning point for capitalism more generally, business schools are rushing to adapt their research, overhaul their curricula to meet the demands of this new skill set and the insights that we're gaining that a post-COVID world is likely to require. Now, many organizations many institutions are also offering free advice, new models of supporting business beyond their traditional campus model. And the best description of the higher education system and business schools, even before COVID, was major uncertainty. And I think this is really an opportunity, a period of opportunity for business schools to demonstrate that they are still relevant, that they have a major relevance, both in their local societies, their local industry settings, their region, and globally. So a widespread theme that also emerged across business schools, an area where the University of Gloucestershire is particularly strong, is around how we enhance management and leadership in a COVID era, including guidance on things like risk management, supply chain management, has been a major trend around how business schools have responded and ensured that they are relevant during a period of major crisis. Now, in the UK, there had already been a major structural shift underway since the last financial crisis across UK institutions around what's the primary function of business. And I think one of the major trends business schools are responding to, and an area of strength for the University of Gloucestershire, is how businesses have a wider social responsibility, including around issues such as climate change, sustainability, and diversity. And that certainly has been the focus at the University of Gloucestershire and at the business school here. But the key point really is this: it's that the impact of the pandemic has meant that business schools have rapidly looked at their curricula. It's put the restructuring of supply chains, remote working, e-commerce on steroids. That's the best way to describe the impact of this pandemic on business. And business schools are attempting to very rapidly respond to that in their curricular design, their course design over the last few months, and looking strategically for the future. How do we support businesses to be resilient in a period of major uncertainty? The other area that business schools have responded over the last few months is in the research agenda. And there's a number of major themes in terms of research, very much tied to the work that we're here discussing today, around productivity in periods of a pandemic, how employees have responded to technological change and disruption, around the impact on people's mental health in this new working environment, but importantly, around the leadership dilemmas and the leadership challenges that we all face during this period of crisis. So with a particular focus on entrepreneurial leadership, leadership by design, and how we support organizations to become resilient during periods of major uncertainty. And the other area that business schools have made a major contribution during this pandemic is leadership in the public sector, particularly healthcare management and supply chain management in healthcare settings. So what we're seeing is UK business schools are responding proactively to this current pandemic and looking really where can they make a contribution that supports UK and global industry as we move through a period of major uncertainty. So ultimately, the challenge is this, that we're all responding to, that in the immediate term, we as business schools need to focus on our applied aspect. Namely, we must be alert and ready to take opportunities, including those that were traditionally outside of the remit of a business school through interdisciplinary work, working proactively externally with partners, whilst keeping sight of our original mission, and developing new ways of thinking that will enable knowledge and impact to support UK business and society through this period of major change and uncertainty. So this is the challenge we're facing as a business school, to make sure we continue to be relevant during this time of crisis. And this really is a major leadership challenge. Do we have the ability within our UK HEIs, higher educational institutes, to respond effectively to this challenge to ensure our future relevance? So overall, business schools have been hugely proactive and innovative in facing the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. As I've said, from innovative online teaching, wide sharing of research and expertise, to direct support for businesses and government initiatives. And I've provided here for afterwards, for sharing, a link where you can see a range of really strong case studies about how UK business schools have responded to the current crisis, both in terms of leadership, but innovation in design and developments in supporting business through investment in entrepreneurship, investment in startup business, right through to the support of global businesses. So there's a range of concrete examples about how business schools have done this and how they've responded during this period of crisis, both through direct support and advice for individual businesses as they attempt to survive in the face of this pandemic, free access to business, financial and legal advice, free resources, and I've provided a link to a set of those that have been developed by one university, some really strong resources for business, but also financial support for individuals directly affected by the pandemic, where we start to look for models to reskill and retrain individuals as we experience major economic restructuring as a nation, as in the UK. And historically, the UK has been very reliant on, for example, retail and hospitality, and those sectors have been hugely affected by the pandemic. So very quickly, there's a number of challenges that come up, and I hope this will probably be picked up by some of the other speakers today. But ultimately, there are a range of leadership challenges that then presents to higher education institutions. The first is, do we have the capacity to respond creatively in times of crisis? And the agility of the higher education sector has been questioned. Can we respond with pace to these challenges? Now, the second leadership challenge is about transparency, around compassionate leadership, around collaborative problem solving during a major pandemic, when inevitably people are anxious, they're experiencing major changes in their lives, they're working in different environments. So again, a major leadership challenge for those who are in leadership roles within higher educational institutions. But we've also seen an element of competitiveness and competitive behavior emerging, both between higher education institutions and inside, as we grapple with the financial elements of this crisis and the financial uncertainty that we face as institutions. So a range of leadership challenges that emerge. Now, what I want to just very quickly highlight is there are also longer term questions and strategic questions that have emerged through this crisis. So there's a significant challenge, obviously, to the dominant models of capitalism. And those are being challenged both by business schools, but also by society and the members of our society. So what is the role of business schools in offering alternative models, including models of circular economy, ethical business and sustainability, is a key strategic challenge that we face as we move through this period of crisis. The second challenge is, how do we as a business school utilize our expertise to support startup business and entrepreneurship as a model of regional economic development and recovery. What's our role as a business school? And I think that's very much aligned with the work that you have all been doing. And so I'm really interested to see a bit more of that. And the final area, the longer term strategic challenge that we face during this pandemic is, what is the role of business schools in society? What is our economic contribution? And how should we be working to deal with these global challenges, these big challenges that we face through, that are highlighted by the current crisis and pandemic? So this is a bit of a whistle-stop tour about how business schools have responded, how higher education has responded to the current crisis. So a bit quick summary. Ultimately, the post-lockdown context for businesses provides a real opportunity for the work of business schools in the UK, but it could also present us with serious problems. Now, on the one hand, business schools are more important than they've ever been. We need to support the flexibility around short-term trading conditions for business, around supply chain challenges, to reinvent themselves where needed. And business schools have a fundamental part to play in that. But on the other hand, as I've highlighted, we also face major financial uncertainty. So we need to internally look at models that ensure our future sustainability. Now, we face major challenges as an institution. How do we respond to these changing conditions? Do we have the necessary skills as an institution to respond quickly for online delivery and assessment? Can we plan effectively for our future financial sustainability? But all of that needs to be done with clear, decisive, compassionate leadership. And that's not always been done successfully. So there is a major question about the leadership capacity and skills that exist within higher education. And as I've said, business school curricula needs to be rooted in the challenges that we are facing through this crisis, and that all industries are facing. The social and economic value of business schools is being asked and questioned more than it's ever been. And we now have a challenge to respond to that. And we need to demonstrate very clearly what our contribution is to supporting the economic regeneration of our rural and urban economies in the UK. And the final thing I'd like to share with you is about culture. And one of the major challenges that we will face as business schools is that our cultures need to change. In particular, that will need to be around our readiness, our creativity, our ability to rethink practice. The comfortable certainties of business have changed, they're gone. And we need to be capable of being partners with industry to explore new ways of working, new markets, take risks, and really help a generation of students to have the necessary resilience and talents that are going to be so necessary as we emerge through this crisis and start to rebuild economically. So thank you very much. I'll stop there. And thank you very much for the opportunity to present today.
Thank you for your interesting sharing from the UK Business School. It was interesting to know that you mentioned the international market for the UK education is increasing during the pandemic, right?
It is, yes.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, we will discuss that during the question and answer session after the three speakers speak.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. Now I give time for Prof. Johnny Arta to share his thought. Please, Pak Johnny.
Yes, thank you, Adi. Sorry. Okay, thank you, Adi. So let me present my thought based on my observations, my experiences, and also based on discussion with friends in assessors group, and of course based on my analysis. Firstly, I would like to invite all of you to look at the facts that occurred during the pandemic, and then try to take a lesson from our experiences during the pandemics. And at the end, I would like to present my thoughts on what university should do. I will start with one of important lessons that change is an intrinsic part of human life. So accepting, adjusting, and adapting to change is a natural and wise decision for humans. So here, I would like to show you the outline of my presentations. Here, I divide my presentation into 3 groups. The first group about facts, about the pandemics, and of course, about the experience in Indonesian education. Then what we get, or the lesson learned, what we get from this pandemic, and at the last, what we have to do. So let me show you some facts in Indonesian higher education institutions. You can see in here that digital learning has proven to be the key to adjusting learning activities during the lockdown due to the pandemic. So although we know that there is what we call maybe Google Classroom University or Zoom universities, but all of them are not effective learning. This is because most of academic teaching, especially academic teaching online, I mean, are still struggling to find the ways to translate. This is the key. They translate their material online during the pandemic. So some teachers, maybe including me, we are struggling to translate our materials, offline material, to be the online material. And other facts that many universities in Indonesia are almost closed, especially for small higher education that they have, who has student less than 1,000. In Indonesia, there are many universities, many higher educations with students less than 1,000, or maybe less than 500. So, but we know that universities that tend to perform well are universities that are, we can say that they are rich and have the power. The next fact, that the pandemic on the one hand has brought misery to mankind. We know that. But on the other hand, it's a blessing for the education system in Indonesia. This may be a contradictory statement, but the disruption has created a significant shift from traditional teaching methodologies to the new methodologies, like we can say that a virtual teaching. The pandemic has shown to Indonesian higher education that the university need to equip with the infrastructure and technology. And also we can, the next one, sorry. Okay. And other fact that the pandemic has shown that not many higher educations have prepared programs to provide their lecturers with the skills needed to adapt to the digital environment. So some university that I just found this morning also, that's most of the lecturer is not ready for the online learning. So we know that other facts, that adaptation between university or between higher education or between a region is different due to technological readiness. So the pandemic has been able to force students to study independently. These are one of facts. Especially in Indonesia, maybe in Europe, in the UK, the student has to learn independent, but most of our students are not independent. So we can see that the pandemic also has been able to urge students to be more disciplined, especially to take, to give the assignment, maybe also to join the online tutoring and online practice to show their assignments to the lectures. So the next part of this my presentation is the lesson learned. What lesson can we learn from this pandemic? I can say that student and also lecturer and even their families already feel comfortable with some adaptation in learning, even though they use educational methods and tools that they have never seen before. They never seen before pandemic, but now they have to use it. So they are getting used to various changes in education. In Indonesia, we know that students and lecturers are very familiar with Zoom, with Microsoft Teams, Google Classroom, Cisco WebEx, and etc., which might not have been known if there is no pandemic. But it doesn't mean that all online tools are great. Many don't, but now lecturer and student can have many alternatives to online technology. So adaptation to technology has given student families an understanding that buying equipment such as laptops, smartphones, and the like is part of an investment in human resource development. Therefore, I thought that in the future, parents will not be too surprised if learning is developed with more advanced technology in learning. For example, if you use like augmented reality, virtual reality, machine learning, etc. Another lesson that we can learn from this pandemic, that the future online learning experience will be easily combined with offline learning, so that the demands of the physical presence of students or maybe of lecturers in the class are irrelevant, as long as the attendance can be represented by virtual attendance at a time that is not critical for this course. I mean, the critical time for this course, I mean, is a time that requires physical presence for direct interaction. So the learning outcomes and the time can be evaluated directly. Other lesson we can learn is that universities that are easy to adapt are universities that have an IT department, and also who has maybe that we can call the curriculum department. This is not the same as using an offline curriculum that is delivered online, that what Dom already said before. Many universities that have difficulty adapting are forced to close or merge with other universities based off this. So based on these facts and based on this lesson learned, I thought that the university need to collaborate. University must get rid of selfishness, feeling of prestige and intellectual pride. They must collaborate by making learning content together for certain courses seriously. And of course, this should be suitable for online. And content preparation can be done together for this collaboration group. And maybe also to allow universities that have expert lecturers to work on learning content according to their expertise. Even you are in the group, it's not mean that you have to contribute to make this content of this one course based on this group, that collaborating group. Because the content should be done by an expert in this area. This learning content can be delivered as synchronously or asynchronous. And the results are shared by all collaborating universities. And I think that universities that do not have a lecturer who are expert on the content of these, say, specific courses, they must be willing to use the learning materials that have been made together between this university without feeling inferior, because maybe the university will feel in content in other courses. So, in here, the university must prepare interaction model that allows the development of broader soft skill. This is all what I have prepared. Maybe it's quite general, but if we can go more detail, so this is the collaboration will do it together. The collaboration group, the collaboration university, collaborating university will do it together. Thank you, Adi.
Thank you, Prof. Johnny. I think I found the same take-home point from Dom and Prof. Johnny in relation that universities need to collaborate, where Dom previously said that we can collaborate more with, further collaborate with industry, while Pak Johnny mentioned that collaborate with universities. So I think the key point is collaboration to cope or to deal with the pandemic. Now we can further discuss about that one, about the collaboration. And then now I let Dr. Wiyono Raharjo to deliver his thought first, then we will conclude with the question and answer session after this presentation. Pak Wing, please, Pak.
Thank you, Pak Adi. Can you see this, the picture?
Yes, we can clearly.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I would like to thank Nadine and Pak Adi for inviting me to share UE experience in managing the university organization in time of disaster. Well, my presentation is certainly very different from the presentation of Don and Johnny. You know, both of you talk about pandemic, but this one is a different thread. It's about our experience in managing universities during the disaster, volcanic eruptions in 2010. Some of the material actually I've already shared during the kickoff meeting of BUiLD, but I modified it so because I see that the participants of this webinar is coming from outside the BUiLD network. So I'd like to talk about three things. This is really a focus on, maybe I can say that this is like an autoethnography approach of looking at the disaster. So this is, I use a case study of UII. Hopefully from that case study, we can learn what is universal, what is the experience can be adopted by other leaders of universities. So I will start with introducing UI campus. Then I'm going to talk about the eruptions of Merapi in 2010. Then the aftermath. What future strategies that we might set, right, to respond to the disaster, right? Right. This is the main campus of UII. If you look at this, the pictures, the area of this campus is approximately 40 hectares. UII was established in 1945 in Jakarta and then moved to Jogja in 1947. And this site is quite new, right? It was set in 1990. And if you see this map, the location is quite close to Mount Merapi. I have already put the red dot. We have 5 campuses across the province of Yogyakarta, mainly in Sleman Regency. Jogja is, for those who are not familiar to Jogja, Jogja is a kingdom divided by 4 regencies and 1 capital, right? So our university are located in one of the regency called Sleman, right? The main campus is just, if you look at this, if I remove the pictures, right? So you see the, one moment, let me just move down the, okay. You can see the clearer pictures of distance between the volcano and the main campus. You may wonder why we choose that locations to build our main campus, right? So previously, we only have 4 campuses, right? And then we have a plan of integrating the whole departments physically, right? So we purchase a land, we try to look for alternative of locations before we set up the site, right? Before we I would say, do the land acquisition, right? You may wonder why we choose the location close to this volcano. It's because actually part of the government recommendations at that time that we should choose the location that agriculturally unproductive, and that's we finally choose that area. So it's actually part of the government recommendations. So we realized that the location is quite close to the, if you look at the map, it's like only 16 kilometers from the crater, right? Not even from the slope, from the crater of Mount Merapi, right? So and we realized that Merapi is the most active volcano in Indonesia. And if you maybe read the information in this year only, 2020, there has been 10 eruptions recorded, right? This year only, right? Small eruptions, right? But what I'm going to talk is the major eruptions. It's in exactly 10 years ago. I think it was, if my colleagues from Jogja may recall the memory, it was in October 2010, right? Just to look at the profile of this volcano, it's a stratovolcano, and it's periodically erupted. I think the very big eruption was 1,000 years ago, and the eruption buried temples and settlements around the volcano. Let me just later on I'll show you the temple in our campus. In 2009, we discovered a temple, a Hindu temple in our campus, and it was actually buried by the volcanic activity in the past, right? And we decided to excavate that. We work with the governments, and part of the reason is actually to show to the public not only that we pay attention to the value of heritage building, but also to show the public that this is the you need to prepare for the disaster, right? So it's a part of the communications that we convey to the public, that this temple shows the impact of volcanic eruptions. Okay, 2006 we also experienced eruptions at the same time of the earthquake. That earthquake killed around 6,000 people, mostly in Jogja. And then 2010, the case that I'm going to talk about is, I think it was considered as the largest in the past 200 years. And it killed 367 people. Right, so this is as I mentioned to you, this is the temple that now become part of the landscape of our library. But previously it was buried as a result of volcanic eruptions. There's more temples, but we did not, the archaeologists said that we don't need to dig more. It's enough to just reveal those two to show the treasure, and also as well as the impact of the disaster. So this is not easy, this decision. It takes a strong leadership, because we are Islamic university. There's a Hindu temples, right? There's a controversy between that, right? But when we choose to forget that controversy, and then we see, we treat them as a heritage building, and the public are allowed to come in, especially during we open it especially during the graduation ceremony. Right, so let me focus on 2010 eruptions. It was started in October, and it was no warning from the authority. So really it was like a shock, right? So at that time, then the university leader, the rector, formed a task force to anticipate, war situations. But by the end of October, the activity sharply increased, and the authorities set up a kind of a danger zone with a radius of 7 kilometers from the crater. So we're still safe, right? In fact, we also help the victim, or those who who must get out from those danger zone, we host them in the this sport hall, right? In the sport hall. The left pictures is actually, it was I took it, I think, from my house, right? And this is a common scene at that time, almost every day, from October to November 2010, right? So yeah, so we look after this refugee, but not all of them are willing to move out, right? Some of them believe that, well, maybe the eruption is not going to get worse, right? This is also part of the challenge of a leader in time of disaster, I think. You know, graduation ceremony amid the ongoing eruptions. It's not an easy decision to make, but we have to do that. We work also with the government. I mean, like, we monitor, of course, the volcanic activity, and then so when we feel that it's still okay, because the danger zone is not yet reached our campus, right? So we believe on that, right? So then we organize this, right? And I'm glad we were safe at the time. But we also found a very sad news at that time. This, I think many of Indonesians know this person, Mbah Marijan, is a local spiritual guard of Merapi. He refused to be evacuated. You know, he lived, of course, within the danger zone at that time. So he passed away because of the pyroclastic cloud that hit his neighborhood, right? And because his son is part of our, I mean, his son is our staff, right? So we also take care of the funeral processions at that time in our campus. Now, we found that the first week of November, the situation is getting worse. We saw a larger scale of eruptions, and the authority increased the danger zone to 20 kilometers. That means that we have to shut down our campus. And that needs a very, a strong leadership. I mean, like, you know, we shut down our campus, and then we have to vacate it and then move the activity outside the campus, right? Even myself, I had to move out from my house. So I was a refugee for a month at that time, right? So, so our campus has to be vacated, including the refugee that we host inside the sport hall, right? So we work with the governments, and we move the refugee to the government sport facilities in the city, right? So, you know, collaborations, I think, you know, the previous speakers talk about collaboration. This is something that you strongly need in time of disaster, right? This is the situations. So I occasionally did an observations. So it's deserted campus. The second pictures is our bus, you know, very dirty because of volcanic ash. We use that to move the refugee to different locations. And the very difficult decision is to move all the main campus activity to the other 4 campuses, right? So it's really challenging because we have to quickly map our assets, and then to see how it fits to the to host the academic activity, because we didn't know at the time how long the eruptions is going to last, right? And also, we moved the university headquarters, right? This is really, this is a temporary rectorate office in a different campus, right? So all the management, all the dean that belong to the main campus, they work in this this office together, right? So yeah, I'm glad. I was glad that I think mid of November or end of November, I didn't remember. This is a part of the problem that we didn't have a good record, right? It was end of November, if I'm not mistaken. The eruption stopped, right? And then we could gradually come back to the campus. But our team is still working with the people. Like, for instance, this one, we have a psychological team that work with people for trauma healing during the rehabilitations, right? And also our medical team also work. Our architecture team also work with the reconstruction of the devastated housing. Right. So, and then beyond this disaster Merapi, we also, quite active in as many other university to support the victim of disaster across Indonesia. This is an example of how we did a crowdfunding during the Palu and Donggala earthquake. And also, we also sent the medical team in the Palu earthquake some couple of years ago, right? So, what lesson learned? What lesson can we learn from the experience? I think the first is, for us, we see that people are easy to forget the disaster. You know, if I look at the everyday life in Jogja, people look like that they don't remember. It was there was a major disaster that happened 10 years ago, right? So I think we could actually transform the disaster task force to a more permanent within university, so that they can do a kind of awareness training, continuous training in disaster preparedness. That's because disaster preparedness is really a problem here in many universities in Indonesia. And I'm glad that we joined the BUiLD network, because then we can learn from each other to develop the curriculum that I would say increase the awareness of both the students and lecturers, because through educations we can gradually, I mean, like we can change the mindset of the people through students, right? Then funding allocated for disaster preparedness. I see that if you look at the university budget, I think the funding allocated for disaster preparedness is really not significant, right? For training, for instance. So this is the lesson learned, that we in the future we need to do that, right? And also for us, especially for those who live near the I would say the disasters in disaster-prone area, you need to map the physical assets as part of the disaster preparedness. I guess that's all. Thank you very much. And back to you, Pak Adi.
Thank you, Pak Wing, for your sharing about the natural disaster. The previous two speakers shared about the pandemic disaster, while you shared about the natural disaster of the Merapi volcanic activity. Now we enter for the question and answer session. Then, as I see that the participants are not many, then I think it is still possible for those who ask questions to unmute yourself and then ask your questions to the speaker, and then the speaker will directly answer it. Please, for the participants who would like to ask, you can unmute yourself and also turn on your video. You can raise your question and then ask to the speakers. Please. Okay, to open the question, if there is no question yet, then I would like to ask to Dom. You mentioned that during the pandemic, the international market to the UK education is increasing. Why it could be happen? I mean, for during the pandemic, I think not many people thinking of going overseas, perhaps.
I know. Yeah, it's a good question. It's one. So it's been a mixed market, really. Some institutions have found themselves that they've struggled in the international market. So it's not necessarily sector wide. I think some institutions have suffered during this period of time. Largely, I think it's been driven by a change in UK government policy. So alongside the pandemic, what the government did was simplify the UK VR regulations, the visa regulations, which meant that the process of accessing UK institutions became much simpler, much quicker. In addition, we have essentially gone in a similar direction as Canada, and we now have guaranteed 2-year post-study work visas for all students, as long as they're in the UK by March next year. So even if they study the whole of the degree online at distance, as long as they're in the UK by March, they will be entitled to a 2-year post-study work visa. So what we haven't necessarily seen is that on-campus movement of volume numbers of international students, but because of the innovations and coupled with UK changes in visa regs, we've actually seen growth in applications. To put that in perspective, for the University of Gloucestershire undergraduate level, we've had a 250% increase in overseas international enrolments this year. So that's where we are. It was unexpected for us as well. That's all I'll say. But yeah, no, I think that's the. But also, I think we need to accept that across the world, the countries are experiencing economic recession, a real crisis, and often higher education is a haven for 2-3 years, whilst the world experiences its worst recession probably that it's ever experienced. So I think often higher education can be a safe space for people during periods of crisis. So that's my reading of what's happened. Thanks.
Thank you, Don, for your insightful opinion. Okay, now I open once again. Okay, Mike, please, you can unmute yourself. I will help you. Okay, please.
Thanks. Thank you, Addy. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone who have presented this morning. I mean, some really interesting stuff. Every crisis presents an opportunity, I believe, and there's a big opportunity here, as I have discussed with Nadine on a number of occasions, to design and deliver individual, collective, and organizational resilience into our academic curricula, whether that be to manage the risks of volcanic eruption or pandemic illness, that full spectrum of risk, and to design and deliver that to both the individuals whilst they're at their universities and studying, but also to develop that into their future lives and the organizations and businesses they will work within. What I'm interested to get Wing's view and Dom's view. What are the key challenges around sort of designing that level of individual and collective resilience into our academic courses, and for future use in these individuals' lives when they go into their organizations?
Thank you, Mike. Please, Pak Wing first, then Dom.
Okay, well, thank you, Mike. Well, this is a challenging question because we are challenged also by that situations. I think in several conversation within the BUiLD network, I mentioned to our colleagues that we run a program on disaster management at the master level, but the appetite, I mean, like the number of students who are interested in the field is really very low, right? And so we see that okay, how can we make that program survive, right? This is part of our challenge, right? The second one is that many, like for instance, faculty in our university, for instance, we have some faculty that really very active in activity that relates to disaster, for instance, medical faculty, right? Because you know, they have a tangible kind of activity. I mean, like tangible needs, right? They the victim of disaster, they need medical doctors so that they can act right away. So they can include that in the curriculum from the civil engineering and then from architecture, right? There is also a tangible kind of situation where you can just directly respond, right? But there are many other fields that really still try to find out how can they contribute to the field, right? So that's something that perhaps this project, this BUiLD project, can be an avenue for us to really look for, I would say, like inspirational solutions to increase to improve the awareness of those academics, right? I think that's my response. I'm not sure if it's really responding to the whole questions.
No, I mean, that was very useful. Yeah. Thank you, Wing. Thank you very much.
Mike, I'll add to that. I think Wing's absolutely right. I think there's a challenge around internal capacity to deliver and developing internal capacity. But I also think that it takes often, certainly from a business school perspective, takes us outside of our traditional comfort area in terms of delivery. So I think, you know, certainly resilience has two elements to it, really, doesn't it? I mean, we've got the technical element, which is the sort of more theoretical space where we think about dynamic supply chains or leadership challenges, or, you know, from a business school perspective. But there's a competency component, which is how do we build competence and skill in those individuals, and I think that's a real challenge for curriculum design. And there are some really interesting models emerging, things like challenge-based curriculum, where we would work with individuals and with organizations to support them through that process of thinking about challenges, be it how do we manage through crisis, or how do we create more flexible and innovative organizations that can respond flexibly to these challenging periods. But ultimately that takes business schools outside of their traditional comfort zone in terms of curriculum design. And for me, the answer is we do it through partnership. We have to do it through partnership, either with industry or with external experts, or something that is co-delivered and co-designed is the answer, really, rather than us assuming that we have the internal capacity or capability to deliver high quality learning in these areas. But I would say that, you know, moving forward, an MBA or an undergraduate degree that doesn't address these issues will create graduates that will not be able to cope in the dynamic external environment we're facing. So, you know, I'm in full support of what you said, but I do think it can only be achieved through partnership and through co-creation, both global partnership and perhaps industry partnership. So I think the work that we're doing here, for example, is a very good example of where we draw on capacity at a global level, But I do think there's also a curriculum design issue that we need to think very carefully about. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Can I add a little bit?
Please,
Adi?
Please,
I think I'm very interested in the word co-design because we also apply that, and it's really very useful for the students to quickly understand the people capacity and something that you don't learn in theoretically in the campus. So let me just give you a little example. We have a subject called co-design in architecture, this one, where the students work directly with the community to solve design problem, right? And there's a lot to learn from that, right? Something, a lot of, I mean, like those lay people, they have, and everyone, they have the capacity of design, right? But sometimes we miss something, and through those field experience, we found that even the students learn how to cope with the disaster, how the community cope with the disaster, because many case studies are located along the river banks where there are flood-prone area, right? So sorry, that's just to add what Don just mentioned. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Wing.
Thank you, Pak Wing. More questions?
Yes.
Yes, please, Nadine.
First of all, thank you very much to our three speakers for what I found were very, very insightful and very inspirational presentations. And I think what I find so delighting and so inspirational about this webinar this morning is that I think it shows that around the room and also in our consortium, we do have a group of people and a group of organizations that do share the same vision and that really believe in the power of universities and being able to act as key change agents. Essentially what the BUiLD project is about. And we started the whole process of putting this project together about 2 years ago. We didn't anticipate that we would find ourselves in a pandemic very shortly after the project start, but I think the current situation has very fundamentally changed the way universities need to look at themselves. And I think this has come out of, particularly Dom, you have talked about the need for business schools and for universities to change and to rethink their purpose, which I find very, very interesting. And that's what we really would like to address much, much more deeply and much, much more comprehensively through this project. And I've got two questions really, and it's to all of the speakers. And the first one is looking at the external landscape, because we've heard quite a lot about how universities have adapted internally, internal processes, challenges in relation to staffing, in relation to delivery, in relation to the need to change curricula, staff development, etc., etc. But I'm wondering about implications for the wider higher educational landscape and policy making. So in order to enable universities to assume what is fundamentally a very different role with a fundamentally different purpose, how do you feel the educational landscape and how does policy making have to change in order to deliver that endeavor? That's the first one. Sorry, I have a second one. And the second one is very much about the internal perspective and what the current situation and also the challenges that we've talked about and the need for a new purpose, what this means for the way in which organizational departments within universities are working together. And I'm thinking about different academic departments, in particular when it comes to course development and also staff development and student support related issues.
Okay, thank you, Nadine. The first one was about the external perspective and the second one was about the internal perspective. Who would like to respond first?
Okay.
Speakers?
Can I?
Yes, please, Pak.
Okay. maybe in general, internal or external perspective. I thought that this disaster has opened the eyes of all leaders of the university, especially for the leader of study programs, that what may not be taught is how to survive in disaster situations. So that all study programs, I think, need to compile survival content in the curriculum according to the study program, not just like a medical or psychology or architecture, but all study programs, say like for the management or business school, like Dom said, management, so they can teach the student or put into the curriculum how to deal with disaster. And maybe for the law student can also learn how to prepare a proper regulation for to prepare for the disaster. So I think, and I thought all study program can have the chance to prepare the curriculum to join and also adapting to the disaster if it's happened. So this is my thought. And I think for the second question, sorry, Adi, for the second question.
Was about the internal?
Yeah, that's an internal. So what we prepare? So we have to prepare our lecture.
Ya, mama lagi jangan telepon mama lagi seminar. Mama lagi seminar.
Okay, I will unmute you first, Pak.
So maybe Pak Wing.
Okay, I'm the second response to Nadine. Wow, this is really challenging questions. Okay, implication in the policy making. I think I would quote again what Don says: the need of partnership with the governments. How we, how we actually can work together in making in making also the policy. Sometimes we have already clear regulations, but we don't implement that well, right? Because lack of communications, right? I can only talk with within my field, for instance. There's a building regulations, very clear building regulations. They comply with they should comply with the disaster, the event of disaster. But the practitioner of the design practitioner, for instance, they don't look at it carefully. Right? So I think what we did in my field is really merge. I mean, like integrating the policy into the exercise in the curriculum. Right? It's part of the what we call it students' performance area that we need to, I would say, assess. Right? That students need to understand a policy when they decide something. Right? And then secondly, from the internal perspective, I think recently in Indonesia, the Ministry of Education introduced what we call independent. I don't know if this is a good translation or not. Independence campus, right? In Indonesia, it's called Kampus Merdeka, right? And every university are encouraged to adopt that into the curriculum, right? So by means independence, that you're free to collaborate. What the challenge at the moment in many universities, sometimes you do a partnership with the similar field. Like for instance, I did a partnership with China, with even the UK, etc. But we don't do partnership with our own colleagues in a different field inside the university. That's really so. Recently, we try to do that. Right? We try to do that. We try to invite what can we do together, right, internally. So as a I would say interpretation of that independence campus concept. I guess that's what I can respond to Nadine's question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wing. Doc, you have any?
Yeah. I think there's two things, Nadine, I'd say. The first one is certainly from a UK perspective. I think the external landscape, the agenda really around higher education has shifted to one that is focused almost entirely on employability and access to employment. And I think really the broader role of universities in creating knowledge-based economies that thrive more generally has been eroded over the last, over the last few years, certainly. And I think that's a real challenge. I think recognizing that access to higher education has broader societal impact is really important. And I think that's certainly rather distinct to the UK compared to, say, the European approach, certainly the German approach or the French approach to higher education. So I think there's a significant challenge there. I think the response to that is that we have to become excellent at showing what our social value is. What is our value beyond simply, do we get students into graduate level jobs? We have a much broader role to play. So that's my first answer to the first question. I haven't got a solution to that, but I just think the answer is that universities need to become excellent at understanding what their value is and role is in society. I'm not sure we are brilliant at that yet. I think we have equally been drawn down this road of focusing on how many students get graduate jobs and that being our primary metric. So that's my answer to the first question. The second part of that about internal collaboration is a really interesting one because it's something I'm passionate about, that ultimately successful universities are those that look for areas of critical mass between traditionally siloed subject areas. So, I think drawing back on Mike's question, actually, if we're thinking about things like the principles of entrepreneurship, or being entrepreneurial, that is something that any student across the university needs to leave university with. And that can only be achieved by pooling the resources that we have by looking for opportunities for collaboration. But what I would say is that certainly in the UK, my experience has been there are major barriers to internal collaboration. And those are in part because of leadership structures, in part because the culture of organizations has been to create these siloed schools rather than to look at what are our cross-school assets, but also they're often financial, that there are financial barriers to engaging in collaborative work. But I do think moving forward, when we're looking for things like opportunities around research and curriculum design, everything we do is going to need to be done collaboratively across the university if we're going to really demonstrate our social value. And I think that goes back to Mike's point about how do we embed principles of resilience, innovation, creativity through everything we do as an institution. So yeah, that's my answer, Nadine. I haven't actually answered either. I presented other problems, but I think that's the reality. It's a significant challenge that we'll face, and certainly one in the UK that is, that we might have not always have individual control over. So yeah, there's my answer. I'll stop now. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc.
Adi, can I? Can I?
Yes. What?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Maybe a little bit. We know that the teaching and, of course, the learning process with technology will continue even after the pandemic ends. So we have to go in depth for the collaborations. We know that now local to global teachings has been done. using an online service or all become a global teaching, and the basic concept of teaching, of course, will change. And students can take courses, of course, from any place in the world they like without leaving their country or city. So maybe our student can learn from UII, also from Gloucestershire, maybe from any part of the world. So if we say in this group, we collaborate, so we allow our student or other student to come to join any, say in some courses, especially in disaster courses, then I think it should be better. So schools and of course university will be encouraged, I think, to create knowledge for all a knowledge seeker. I think it's better for us that's to implement this our team, like in the BUiLD.
Thank you, Pak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Joni.
Yeah, thank you.
I open for one more question as the time is approaching to 5. One more question, if any, only if any.
May I ask the Dom?
Yes, please, Ibu Sri.
Okay,
What is your question?
Thank you, Adi, for the time. And Dom, thank you for the interesting presentation. I think based on your presentation that management or institutional leadership is the determinant for the institution survival and response. But I think the management or leadership will be related to the position of like a rector, like a leader or rector with a limit term and different leadership characteristic. I want your opinion. Does that mean that the policy of survival and response of an institution is not long-term and unsustainable? Thank you.
Right. Okay. Interesting. I'll try and unpick that a little bit. I think that ultimately there are a set of leadership behaviours that universities have historically not been very good at exhibiting, and universities historically, certainly in the UK, have experienced a period of quite significant growth, and that growth was quite predictable. It was a quite stable environment that we were operating in. Over the last 5 years, that has been eroded. So certainly since, actually probably beyond that, so since the last financial crisis. During the last financial crisis, we saw massive growth in higher education again, as a response. I think the challenge is this, that our university leaders do not necessarily hold a set of commercial behaviours and leadership skills around innovation, creativity, risk, taking risks, identifying opportunities. I think what we tend not to have is that entrepreneurial spirit in our universities. And that's largely because we have a predominantly public sector based model. We don't have many private universities in the UK. And we also have a bit of a closed shop. Historically, we haven't had huge competition because, in terms of business schools, there's 130 in the UK. So, it isn't a hugely saturated HE market. That's changed, Shri. So I think my suggestion would be that there's a gap in our leadership capacity in our higher education institutions that will need to be addressed to secure our sustainable futures as institutions. I think the argument that UK higher education is a bit like, say, the banking sector, it's too big to fail, or that the government will prop it up, is not the case anymore. That we will see potentially institutions at risk over the coming few years. We've already seen, for example, strategic mergers in South Wales. So we've seen large institutions merge. We're starting to see strategic partnership models emerge where universities are signing strategic partnerships between institutions to try and share resource and look for. But I think often universities historically have looked to save their way into being sustainable. And that has meant redundancies, cutting of costs, rather than to be innovative in the models that they adopt, to look for new sources of income, to look for new opportunities. There are some examples of UK institutions that are very good at this. For example, Coventry, very, very innovative organisation that takes risks. It looks for new opportunities. There are others, and I would say the majority do not have the leadership capacities that are going to be necessary over the coming years. So the two challenges really are: do we recruit from outside our traditional sectors? So do we recruit from the private sector, for example, to come in and start to look at ourselves as how do we create innovative cultures? Or do we look at what we can use within our institutions that exist at lower levels, so outside of the traditional management sectors, sections of the institution, because we've got real talent across the institution that is creative, it's innovative, in our academic staff. And I think what we'll probably see is a flattening of our organisations to become less bureaucratic and more innovative and entrepreneurial. That would be my hope. And I hope, Nadine, that's something that we'll be trialling in the school, certainly in the business school, is how do we adopt sort of more entrepreneurial cultures in our school that uses the skill and knowledge and ability of all of our members. So there's my answer, Sri. Sorry, I'll stop now. Thank you. Good, brilliant question, though. Thank you.
Thank you, Dom. Thank you for your response to Ibu Sri.
Thank you.
I think as the time is approaching to 5, then it is also time for us to conclude our first webinar. I hope that this webinar will be useful for all of the participants here. And as the host, I would like to apologize if I did something that make you uncomfortable during the webinar and during the registration process. So before we leave, can I ask you to turn on all of the video and then we can wave our hands? Because you can see our webinar in the YouTube. We will share you the link of the YouTube. And then if you want to see and take some pictures of that webinar, of this webinar, you can take it from YouTube. Okay, let us now do the wave.
Bye.
Bye-bye all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Bida.
Everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
Thank you, Nadine. Bye.
Bye, Sri. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Johnny.
Hi. Actually, I would like to leave, but I have to ask. I have to answer some chat in here. I just looked at.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Okay.